Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Sukkah Daf Chaf is the last Daf in the first parak of Masechtas Sukkah, parak Sukkah Shegavaya, and it begins the second parak of Masechtas Sukkah. Now we begin halfway through the first Amud, and we're discussing mat. So when is a mat a kli? When is it designed for lying upon, and therefore it's a kli, and it's mekabel tuma, and it's pasal schach? And when is it not useful as a mattress, and therefore it's not a kli, and it's kosher schach? The Gemara will bring different types of mats, what they're made out of, and how they're made, and what size they are, all factors in determining whether it's useful as something to lie on or not. The Gemara will then introduce other potential uses for a kli, for a mat. Possibly it could be used as a container, or a sieve, or a screen, or a curtain, and when it has those functions, and therefore it is a kli, even if you cannot lie on it and still pasal for schach. The Gemara will also introduce another halacha, the halacha of tumas medris, which also depends on whether you can lie on these mats or not. Then the Gemara will bring a few more opinions, which round out the rest of the parak, and begin the next parak, which discusses somebody who's sleeping under a bed. When is it considered like he's in ohel, in a structure other than the sukkah, and when is it not a separate structure, and therefore he is considered like he's in the sukkah. So let's begin. We start with the brisa, discussing mats that are made out of various plants that are woven or braided together. Now the brisa identifies three different issues here. First of all, what size is the mat? Second of all, what is the mat made out of? And third of all, how is it made? Is it braided or is it woven? Now, what is it made out of, the mat? Is it made out of shifa or gemi? Those are very smooth and easy to make comfortable mats. So there, it depends on what size it is. If it's a nice big mat, it's obviously not meant to be used as a mattress, and therefore it's kosher schach. If it's a small mat, then it is meant to be used as a mattress, and it's pasal schach. Simple. Now, that's agreed by everyone. When it's kanim or chilas, those are different. Those are much harder and much lumpier. And here, it depends on the size and on how it's made. If it's a big mat, kosher, again, it cannot be used as a mattress. However, even if it's a small mat, it's possible that it's still not usable as a mattress because it's too hard and lumpy. Now, Rabbi Shmuel, here we have a machlokes. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Daisa say a small mat here, even a small mat here, is not comfortable and nobody's ever going to use it to sleep on, and therefore it's not a kli and it's kosher to be used for schach. However, Tanna Kama disagrees. He says if it's a small mat and it's woven instead of being braided, then it is comfortable enough. So that's the only circumstance where you have somebody that says that a mat made out of kanim or chilas is possible to use as a mattress to sleep on, and therefore it is pasal schach. All other circumstances, cases, and opinions hold that it is kosher schach. Okay, now the Gemara introduces another topic which is related to the question of whether a mat is useful for sleeping on or not, and that is the topic of tumas medris. The halacha is as follows. There are only two types of tuma that are considered to be an av hatuma. They are the high level of tuma called av hatuma, without them being an innate source of tumah. That is, they get tumah from somewhere else, and they still have a high level of avatuma. Those are something which becomes tumah from tumas meis, and something which becomes tumah from tumas medris zav. Medris zav means that a zav sat on it. Now, any object which is a kli, which is functional, can get tumas meis. In order for it to get tumas medris zav, though, not only does it have to be a functional kli, it has to be a kli that one sits or lies upon. Because the way tumas medris works is that a zav sits or lies upon it, and it's a normal thing to sit or lie on. So again, in order to have tumas meis, all one requires is that something should be a kli. In order to have tumas medris, it has to be a kli that's useful for lying upon. So therefore we have to know all these types of mats. Are they something that a person would lie on or not? The same question that we've been discussing so far. So the Gemara quotes a price here, which says that there's a device called chotzlos. The Gemara will discuss at length what chotzlos are. It's either some type of a bag or some type of a mat. Chotzlos are a machlokes between Rabbi Daisa and the Chachamim, whether they are meant to be lied on, whether they are something you could sit on. According to the Chachamim, it is, and therefore it's mekabel tumas medris. The Gemara first has a version where they say it's only mekabel tumas medris. The Gemara says that can't be, because anything that's mekabel tumas medris is also mekabel tumas meis, because if it's useful to be sat on, then it's definitely a kli. The Gemara says yes, all they meant to say was that it's also mekabel tumas medris. And according to Rabbi Daisa, it may be a kli, so it is mekabel tumas meis, but it is not a kli that a person sits on or lies upon, and therefore it's not makabel tumas medrash. These are these chotzlos. So now the Gemara says, what are these chotzlos? So we'll have two explanations. The first one is that it's marzuvli, which the Gemara defines as a leather bag or a type of sack that a shepherd would use to sit on. He could use it to carry his belongings, and also he would sit on it when he was resting. According to the second opinion, it's a mat. So now, the second opinion is Reish Lakish. The Gemara wants to focus on this opinion of Reish Lakish that it's a mat. So the Gemara says this is in accordance with another Reish Lakish, who quotes another machlokes between Rabbi Daisa and the Chachamim, and it talks about three types of mats: the mats of Usha, the mats of Tfaria, and the mats of everywhere else. So it says the mats of Usha are definitely comfortable, soft, people sit on them. It's Mekabel Tumas Medrash according to everybody. The mats of Tfaria are too hard for anybody to sit on. Everybody agrees they're not Mekabel Tumas Medrash, they're not something you could sit on. All other mats are machlokes. Sometimes people sit on them, sometimes don't. The machlokes between Rabbi Daisa and the Chachamim, whether or not they are Mekabel Tumas Medrash. Rabbi Daisa says you do not sit on them, they're not Mekabel Tumas Medrash, and the Chachamim say you do sit on them, they are Mekabel Tumas Medrash. Okay, good, simple. Now the Gemara, though, is going to ask a couple of kashas on Reish Lakish, and the first one, again, Reish Lakish is the one who said that these chotzlos are mats. That's what they are. It's a question of what they are altogether. So, according to Reish Lakish, that they're mats, we're going to get into the subject of are mats useful for other things. What other things are they useful for besides for lying upon? What other types of kli could they be? So we have a contradiction here, and that is that Rabbi Daisa had said that they are mekabel tumas meis. They may not be mekabel tumas medrash, but they are mekabel tumas meis. That means that they are a kli of some sort. However, way back in our first Mishnah about the kalim and the chotzlos, Rabbi Daisa said it's kasher schach. It's kasher schach. That means it's not makabel any type of tumah, because if it was makabel tumas meis, then it couldn't be kasher schach. So the Gemara therefore says there's another function, and that is that it could be used as a container. And for that, there's two types of mats. It depends if it has a rim around the edges, so that it's useful for holding dates. If it has a rim, then it is a container, and that's what he's referring to when he says that it's makabel tumas meis. If it doesn't have a rim, that it's not a container. It's not useful for being makabel tumas meis, and it's not useful for holding the dates, and therefore it's not makabel tumas meis, and therefore it is kasher schach. The Gemara has another kasha on Reish Lakish, and here we have another brisa, which is going to be the source of the problem. The brisa talks about these objects made out of other types of things, made out of sham and gemi and goat hair and horse hair. And on all these four things, Rabbi Daisa says is mekabel tumas meis, and the Chachamim say is mekabel tumas medrash, even tumas medrash. So now, sham and gemi are very loose weave. There's a lot of holes in them, and they're limited in what their function is. Goat hair and horse hair you can make a very tight cloth out of, and therefore it's more functional. So there's two versions of how the Gemara asks the question here. According to the first version, the Gemara says, I understand the opinion that these chotzlos are bags, because bags you could make a cloth bag is useful because you can make a sack out of it. You could use it to hold very small fruits or anything. If it's a bag made out of the sham and the gemi, which are very large weave with holes in them, it's still useful because it could hold big fruits. My question, though, is that according to Reish Lakish that these are mats. So what are you going to do with a mat made out of sham and gemi? Those are very big weave and it's full of holes. It's useless. Now I understand if it's made out of goat hair or horse hair, you could use it for curtains, you could use it for a sieve. But what are you going to do with it if it's made out of? What are you going to do with it? What function or use does it possibly have if it's made out of the sham and the gemi? So my answer is useful as a cover for a vat which people use to brew their beer. Now the other version of this question is that we say that it's good according to Reish Lakish that it's mats. You could use it for brewing beer or for curtains and sieves. The question was if it's bags. What are you going to do if according to the opinion that it's bags, what could you do with a bag that's full of holes because it's made out of a sham and gemi? And on that, the Gemara answers that you could use it to hold very large fruits. Okay, now the Gemara moves along and quotes some more opinions here. And this ends off the parak for us. Gemara brings a brayso that says, Rabbi Hanani says, when I went down out of Eretz Yisrael, I found an old man, and he said, you're allowed to cover a sukkah, you're allowed to use for schach, you're allowed to use a mat. And when I came to Rabbi Yeshua, who was my father's brother, my uncle, he agreed with that. Gemara says, Rabbi Chizda says, that's only if it doesn't have a rim. If it has a rim around it, then it's a container. It's useful for other things. And then Ua said that the mats are used by the people in Mechuzah, if not for the fact that it had a rim, you could use it for schach. So you see that it's the same halacha, that the rim makes it not useful for schach because it is a kli, and if no rim, that is a kosher schach. Gemara brings a brisa that says the same thing. You're allowed to cover a sukkah, you're allowed to use for schach, you're allowed to use a mat, but if it has a rim around it, then you're not allowed to use the mat. This concludes the parak. Now we'll begin the next parak, which is hayoshen tachas hamita, somebody who sleeps underneath a bed in a sukkah. And so we begin with the Mishnah, which discusses a machlokas as to what is the halacha of somebody who sleeps underneath the bed in the sukkah. So the Gemara says that Rabbi Yehuda says that your yotze the mitzvah of sukkah, it counts as if you slept in the sukkah, even though you're underneath the bed. And he says, and my proof is that we used to sleep that way in the presence of the Zikanim, and they didn't say anything to us about us not being Yotze. However, the Gemara says that the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Gamliel disagree. The Tanna Kama says you're not Yotze, and Rabbi Gamliel apparently holds that way based on a statement that Rav Shimon says over. Rav Shimon says that Rabbi Gamliel had a slave named Tavi. It was an Eved Kanana. He was chayiv in mitzvahs only like a woman, and therefore he's not chayiv in the mitzvah of sukkah, and he used to sleep underneath the bed. Or maybe it was one time when he did that because the sukkah was too crowded. He wants to sleep in the sukkah with the men, but he knew he wasn't chayiv in the mitzvah, so he left room for other people, and he slept under the bed. And Rabban Gamliel said to the Chachamim, you see how big a Talmid Chacham, my Eved Tavi is that he slept under the bed because he knows that he's not chayiv in the mitzvah of sukkah. So you see that Rabbi Gamliel there holds that one sleeping under the bed is not being mekayim the mitzvah of sukkah. So now the Gemara begins, and the Gemara asks that there is no space of 10 tefachim from the bed to the floor. So why should it be a problem? In order for it to be an OL, you have to have a 10 tefachim high space. In order for it to be considered a separate enclosure, it has to be 10 tefachim high space. The Gemara says, yes, that's correct. And we're talking about here where it was 10 tefachim high, and still Rabbi Yehuda disagrees, and Rabbi Yehuda says that you are Yotze. Now the Gemara is going to analyze the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda at length. And first it goes into the sugya of ohel as far as tumas meis. The halacha is that if you have two items under the same roof, one is a piece of a dead body and the other is some other object, the dead body transmits tumah to the other object through the roof. It goes up to the roof, spreads out to everything under the roof, including the other object. So what kind of roof qualifies for this? So the Gemara begins by introducing a machlokas as to whether something that is naturally formed, a naturally formed roof or ledge or hollow with a ceiling, does that count to transmit tumas ohel or not? So according to Rabbi Yehuda, yes, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it does not. According to Chachamim, yes, it does. The Gemara quotes a Mishnah that has a few examples. We have running water in a stream that hollows out a space under the riverbank, or creatures who dig out a space, or there's minerals or materials that eat away at it and it cracks and falls away, or if you have a pile of rocks and one rock is on top of two other ones and forms a ceiling, or a stack of beams. All these situations, according to the Chachamim, it is a roof and it does transfer tumah. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it does not. Now, what's Rabbi Yehuda's source? So Rabbi Yehuda says that the halach of tumas ohel is learned out of a pasuk that says Zos taras ha'adam ki yamos ba'ohel. And concerning the making of the Mishkan, it says v'yifros es ha'ohel al Mishkan. So you connect the two with the word ohel, and therefore, just like the Mishkan was man-made, the only type of ohel that transmits tumah is also man-made. And the Gemara says the Chachamim disagree because they say the word ohel is used a number of times, and that's an extra inclusory phrase is to include many different types of ohel, many different types of roof, including ones that are not man-made. Now the Gemara will continue and discuss it at length. We'll leave that for Daf.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.